July 13th, 2013. Sanford, Florida resident George Michael Zimmerman is acquitted on all counts, including second-degree murder and the death of Trayvon Martin. 17, unarmed, and black. 5 of 6 jurors are white. None are black. George is white. February 9th, 2013, the Zimmerman family states that George is mixed race, Afro-Peruvian and Irish, and that media routinely lightened his skin to portray him as a white racist. George is not white. July 27th, 2012, George's close friend and devout white supremacist Frank Taft becomes George's most vocal supporter. George is white. July 15th, 2013, Fox News argues that Latinx protesters of the Zimmerman verdict should be standing by the one of their own race. George is an opportunist. January 15th, 1866, Florida's black codes deem anyone with an 8th African ancestry as black. George's great-grandfather is black. George is black. July 28th, 2013, George is pulled over for speeding near Dallas, Texas. He tells the officer of the pistol in his glove box and is left with nothing but a warning and a continued lifespan. George is not black. February 2nd, 1848, after the annexation of northern Mexico, Hispanics are labeled white when only whites may legally own land. George is white. April 1st, 1930, Mexican is added to the US Census to legitimize deporting 500,000 Hispanic citizens. George is not white. April 1st, 1940, Hispanics re-become white after protesting having to use segregated facilities with black and Asian Americans, and George is a middleman. October 16th, 2003, I'm 10 and old enough to ask if I'm a collage of my parents' skins or none of them when a white kid tells me I do not look like one of the bad Latinos, and George does not need to be white to have white privilege. George does not need to be white to be anti-black. January 2nd, 2009, I'm 14, watching Oscar Grant's last breaths leave him for the first time when I ask my dad of my skin and all its invitations, and George is whatever the cop's swift hand says he is. September 2nd, 2014, George is pulled over for a 5th time after yelling to a man, "Do you know who I am? I'll fucking kill you," and George is a celebrity. George is George Zimmerman from TV. April 26, 2005, the stand your ground law that will protect George is passed in Florida through ALEC by the gun industry, and George is capital, an investment. George spikes gun sales. George is a salesman. May 11th, 2012, Marissa Alexander uses the same law by firing a warning shot to defend herself from an abusive husband. Marissa is sentenced to 20 years in prison. Marissa is black. George is American. George is George Zimmerman from TV. February 26, 2012, the cops come for George, and George slips on the right or the white skin, and George is right or white or holds rights. George is documented, does not have an accent, does not have a disability, is not black, is not Muslim, is not woman. George is man. George is cis man. George is alive. 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 George is alive.